going back to those recruits, we got a top 5 list to wrap us up before the night is over. Top 5 Clemson football players or Clemson football freshmen that are coming in for 2020 that we think are going to get the most playing time, or going to see the most time on the field, or maybe even start. So people that players that we think that are going to make the most impact for next season. I think a lot of people probably know where we're going with this, but I'm going to throw in one like aha for you, Al. I'm going to throw in one. I gotcha. I told you so. Not so fast. I'm going to throw one in there for you. I hope you have one for me. But for me, really, the top guy, the guy that is going to get playing time, that you can't deny it, is going to be Brian Bresee, defensive tackle, Damascus, Maryland, 6'5", 290, 5-star, number 1 overall on some sites, on most of the sites, I guess. But this guy is a man among children in high school, and he is going to dominate, I believe, in college as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Obviously I've made my opinion very well known on Bresee, labeling him possibly the best defensive player ever to come through Clemson. I think we're going to see him early, and I think we're going to see him often, whether it be at defensive tackle or defensive end. I think he's going to allow Clemson to go back to their 4-man fronts. Now, you're still going to see 3-man fronts. I think Venables, liked a lot of what he saw this past year, and being able to, confuse defenses even more than he already has. So you're going to see a little mix of both, and there's no telling, what kind of position he'll play in all those schemes. But he's going to be dominant, I'm pretty sure. I got to tell you, I'm going to be pretty shocked if he's not starting early in the season, if not by game 1.
And I told you this last week. The more I looked at that defensive line, those brand new defensive linemen that are coming in, you're not going to be able to keep them off the field for very long. And Bresee is that first guy that I feel like if you felt like it was a shocker that Tyler Davis got time, it's going to be. I mean, Tyler Davis. One of those guys gonna have to move over for Bresee because he's gonna play, and he's bigger, he's badder, he's about 4 inches taller than Davis, and I think right about the same weight. So he's gonna play, and I agree with you. He very likely will start as well. For me, number 2, and I don't know if you agree with me on this one, he's not getting talked about a lot. It's kind of rare that you have so many other great players that another great player doesn't get talked about. But this is Myles Murphy, defensive end, Powder Springs, Georgia, 6'4", 225, 5-star. Dominant defensive end. Doesn't get talked about much because everybody talks about DJ or Bowman or Bresee, but I think that Murphy is going to show up big because I feel like that, XT had some areas to improve. Maybe Murphy comes in there and shows out a little bit. Maybe he pushes him a little bit. Maybe he challenges for some time. Or maybe on the other end, Foster's not a guy that was expected to be a starter, for long term anyways. And so maybe Murphy takes in and jumps over him, even though I respect what Foster did last year. And he played in that 3-4 defense or 3-3-5 as best he could. Another thing, too, is I'm not beating up these defensive ends because they had to do something very difficult. XT and Foster had to play in a 3-man front, which they're really not designed for that. They were really more designed to have 4 guys on the front and let them work a little bit differently on the edge there. And hopefully the Clemson Tigers will be able to do that because of the guy we mentioned before.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll get to Myles Murphy here in just a few minutes. My number 2, I actually have R.J. Mickens. After we lost both starting safeties, Mickens is a highly regarded player. He comes in and like other team, he's going to earn some guys or like some of the other guys that I'm going to talk about here on this list. I actually had my list set up to go from 5 to 1, but I assumed you may want to start at 1 since Bresee, I think we kind of figure is the unanimous number 1. But like some of the other guys, on the team, he's going to kind of have his chance to crack the 2 deep, I believe, and he can contend for a starting spot as the season progresses. I think one of the things that's kind of difficult about projecting these guys to make impacts as freshmen is the fact that Clemson is just too dang talented right now. There's too many good players. There's too many 5-stars already on the roster and already on the field or already in backup roles last year who got some playing time for these guys to unseat. Now, I think you get a Brian Bresee, and there's no question about it. But Mickens is a very highly regarded player as well. So I think he's going to get a chance to kind of come play, make some noise probably behind, Nolan Turner and Zanders, and I guess Charleston will probably be there as well. But I think you could hear from Mickens this season a lot.
Now, That was gonna I was gonna hold him as kind of my surprise, my aha. He's not, but now I'll change it up. I had multiple ahas just in case, depending on where you go. Just so you know, Alan and I didn't share any of this beforehand. We kind of just winging this show tonight. It's been pretty fun. I hope you enjoy it. And we still got some time over on the Charleston Sports Pub hotline, 864-772-6674. Get in now before the show ends. But for me, I've got Brzee, I got Murphy, and then another defensive lineman, DeMonte Capehart. I mean, he is going to be on the field early and often. From Bradenton, Florida, really not from Bradenton, Florida. That's where he played last. He's from South Carolina. 6'6", 300 pounds, 4-star, but he's a 6 rated overall in Rivals, which means he's like a sliver away from a 5-star. And if you see him play, he is definitely worth every penny of that rating for sure, even though he didn't end up getting it. But 6'6", 300, I mean, that's what you want in a defensive tackle for sure. And he could fit right there next to Bryan Brzee. 1-2 right next to each other. I'm going to say, hey, watch out. Guys that were there last year, Pinkney, Davis, watch out because these young boys are coming.
Yeah, DeMonte Capehart, obviously a big guy for sure. I don't have him on my list. I think you've got some quality options in Jordan Williams and Niles Pinkney as well. Of course, Tyler Davis. So I'm not so sure he gets a ton of playing time this year. I think he'll certainly play. I don't think there's any point in really redshirting him because I think he's going to be good. But my number 3 is Walker Parks. We all hear about how hard it is to kind of earn playing time as an offensive lineman. Mitch Hyatt did it. Carmen can do it. He did it as a young guy too. So I think Walker Parks has kind of a similar opportunity. He comes in, kind of in the mold of a Mitch Hyatt. I think he's actually going to be a little bit heavier when he gets on campus. He did a really good job of putting on weight in high school. Obviously he's not. There's a high likelihood he's not going to be the number 1. I think, McFadden and Carmen are your guys there. He's definitely not beating out Carmen. But, I think he has a chance to see pretty significant minutes as a backup anyways, as Clemson look towards the future. I think it's not getting here till the summer is going to hurt him. He's not an early enrollee. I think we've talked about that a little bit. But Clemson's depth is going to force the issue here, and I think he's going to get on the field.
Yeah, it really is because of depth, and that's why I put him as my 4th guy up. Walker Parks, offensive tackle from Lexington, Kentucky, 6'5", 275. Per our recruiting dinner that we went to, he's around 294 right now, Al. And he won't be coming in the spring. That is a huge knock against him in that sense. I mean, he's only going to have 2. He's going to get in June, half of June, July, and half of August. So barely 2 months to really kind of get ready. Clemson's going to again play one of the first teams to play in 2020. And so he's not going to have a lot of time. Fall practice is going to come up quick, and he better be ready in that sense. And it seems like he's doing what's needed. I mean, last time he was registered was 20 pounds lighter, but he's right there up there. And he is listed as somebody who could start early on as a tackle position. If you look at those 6 offensive linemen that the Clemson Tigers recruited, most of the coaches told us in that recruiting dinner that they were going to become guards. Even though they played tackles in high school, and we mentioned this on our Monday night show last week, most of those guys are tackles in high school just because they're so freaking huge that they need to be there to protect that quarterback in high school. But in college, more than likely you're going to go to a guard position. But Parks was one of those guys that they felt like we're going to keep at a tackle position. But like you said, Brad Sinkiff said on Sports Illustrated that more than likely Carmen and McFadden were 1-2 over on the left tackle side. Now, you could keep them that way, and you could have a really strong left tackle, but then there's 4 other positions that are available that need replacements. All ACC replacements, might I add, as well. So more than likely that Jordan McFadden is going to move over to right tackle and help shore up that position. So it looks like the Clemson corners or edges of the offensive line are going to be filled with very experienced guys. Obviously, a very talented guy on the left side, and an even a great guy from Dorman, a top player over there on the right side. If you really look at that offensive line, Al, it's not as bad as people are saying in chat. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, got to talk about the offensive line," but you got Carmen, and then you've got Matt Bockhorst. Right. Eric McLean said he is a guy who will knock you into the ground. There's a couple of shows back. If you missed it, go check out our YouTube channel. He will knock you in the ground, punch you in the face, legally, in practice maybe. He will knock you to the ground and get up and laugh at you. He's that type of guy. But Bockhorst, at left tackle, and then Cade Stewart, another guy who had almost, I think he definitely had over 200 snaps last season. He's a guy at center that's going to be ready to go, a fifth-year senior at center. So from left to center, I'm actually not as worried as I used to be. And that right tackle position, if McFadden goes there or if Parks backs him up, I'm not necessarily as worried as I used to be about that either.
Yeah, no, I'm not. It's really a depth thing. I think it's where do you go to behind those guys? You got some guys, like Blake Vincent, who's kind of supposed to be one of your guys competing for one of those tackle spots, has been injured. Can he come back from injury? When does he get back from injury? And when is he fully healthy and ready to go? And is he really ready to contribute? I think one of the main things about next year is going to be the right guard spot when you have probably Will Putnam will be your starter there. And he does not have a ton of playing time. Obviously, he'll just be a sophomore. So it's going to be interesting to see who we fill in. And obviously with all the cross training going on, there's going to be mix and match parts in there. So I'm not overly worried about the starters really at all. It's just it's the depth there. My number 4, I actually have EJ Williams on this list. Look, Clemson's very well known these past several years for being wide receiver U, and they're not shy about playing freshmen who earn it. Plain and simple, EJ had a great season. He looked good in his all-star performance. I think the opportunity is going to be there for him to see significant playing time. Obviously, we see these guys come in and they play. Higgins played, Ross played. Now, I'm not saying he's quite to their level or anything like that, but he's a smooth athlete. We like to talk about him. He's got good hands. I think he'll see the field. If not for anything, he'll be there, one of the guys next year's the following season as well.
I like that you picked Williams. He wasn't a guy that I went after, but if you look at it, I kind of did a write-up on the offensive or the wide receivers for the spring practice, and I mean they only have 8. They had 10. They lost 4. They gained 2. So now they only have 8 scholarship guys at wide receiver. A lot of people are like, oh, well, we'll never have a problem at wide receiver. We're wide receiver U. We've got all these great wide receivers. Not necessarily the case, my friends, because there's only 8 of them. So you've got maybe 3, maybe 4 at most times, but there's going to be kind of a 1-2, and they're going to be fighting for that second position. Obviously, you've got Ross is going to be a starter. Rogers is going to be a starter. And then more than likely, I'm guessing Joseph Ngata is going to be another starter there. But behind that, it's a fair game. I mean, you got Powell, you got Spector, you got Williams, and Ajo. Some people in chat are saying about Ajo. I mean, that guy's 6'4", 200 pounds, and he can jump. I mean, I think one of his replays we watched, he had I think he jumped like 15 feet in the air, I want to say, to clear somebody. But no, he definitely has, all jokes aside, I mean, he definitely has some big hops and could be lethal as long as he kind of, gets better around the edges and gets his wide receiver skills tuned up there because he hasn't played American football very long. But right. For me, this is something I don't normally do, Al. I like to stay with my positional, my skill players. I'm sticking to the line, my man. I'm sticking to that line. Defensive line, offensive line. I'm going back to the offensive line again. I told you about Parks. I'm saying Paul Tio. Tio. Because we thought it was Chio, but then he corrected us and said it was Tio with a T. So he's by way, he's got some family members, I believe, in Africa, and that's kind of where that name came from. But this guy, 6'5", 320 pounds from Milton, Georgia. He's another guy that's just a few points away from being a 5-star offensive lineman. He definitely is not a guy who you would expect to play at a tackle position. So this is going to be somebody who's going to play more of a guard position. Now, what guard position will he play? Could he back up Bockhorst? I don't know, maybe. But like you said, Will Putnam is there. His position at right guard will be up for grabs, in my opinion. I mean, I know this guy is new. I know it's going to be a true freshman. I think it's going to be difficult for anybody to do it, but give me the 6'5", 320-pound dude up there any day of the week to come in and show what he can do starting out the gate. He's got the height. He's definitely got the weight. And they even said, I think he was mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, they mentioned that this was the guy who was I think he was up to like 340, lost some weight and is gaining back some muscle, got rid of some of that baby fat, is gaining back some muscle going into the spring. And this was a guy who's already on campus. So he's going to be fighting the Will Putnams of the world very soon. And I look forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think of, obviously, of all the 6 linemen they signed, that Tio and Parks are the 2 that have the best chance to play. And obviously, Tio has a leg up on the fact that he's already on campus. I think Walker Parks is simply, the reason I put Walker Parks on this list, first of all, I like to gravitate towards the tackles a little better anyway, since they're protecting our quarterback. But he's just a little more advanced. He did all the camps and dominated a lot of the camps that he went to. He did get made to look bad by none other than Brian Bresee, obviously, on a play or two. But, I mean, who didn't? So my number 5 actually is a guy that you had number 2, I believe, Myles Murphy. Losing Logan Rudolph kind of unexpectedly this offseason cracks the door open a little bit wider for this talented 5-star freshman defensive end. Rudolph was never going to be a game changer, but he was going to see significant playing time. So now Murphy kind of comes into the year with a possibility of finding a spot on the 2 deep. I think he's still going to start the year behind Thomas and behind Foster. So, but, who knows? Maybe he can come in and make a splash. I really think going to that 4-man front is going to help these guys, especially Thomas, out and kind of see, this is going to kind of be his year to kind of really break through that ceiling. A lot of people wanted him to do it this year. Again, it's not to say that he didn't have stuff to improve on. He did. It's not all the 3-man front that was kind of what was holding him back, but it had a lot to do with it. I'm hoping he can kind of break out next year, but Myles Murphy definitely has a good shot to get in there.
Yeah, well, that wraps up our top 5 players that we think are going to have the most impact as true freshmen for the 2020 season for the Clemson Tigers. Let us know what you think about our picks. If you think we're completely wrong or if we're way off base, put it in the comments. Let us know. If you think you agree with it, put it in the comments as well. I think we got a lot of people who agree with those players that we picked out.